Hello, everyone. Welcome to Soul Sessions
Welcome back.
on a lovely Friday afternoon in July. How are you today, Rob?
Good. I'm Dr. Rob, and I'm here with my beautiful wife and partner.
Deborah Maldonado.
Oh, that's right. I forgot your name.
Yeah, I took your name for you. We are talking, and we're so loving today because we're talking about love. We're talking about Bhakti Yoga in our series on spirituality. We have spiritual paths. We talked about karma yoga last time.
Yeah, and just to refresh the memory, really, karma yoga taught us that we are able to act in the world without incurring more karma through the practice of karma yoga. So karma yoga means the discipline, the internal process of understanding the conditioning power of action and setting ourselves free from that conditioning power.
And it's the key is non-attachment is the application.
Yes.
And so now we're moving on to the path of devotion, which is Bhakti Yoga, and love, devotion, and surrender. And so where karma yoga is more about taking action, this is about what we're feeling in our heart and in our passion and our soul. So it's really a beautiful, wonderful class. So I hope you enjoy it. So let's start off with what is Bhakti Yoga and where does it come from?
Yeah. So the disciplines of yoga, we can trace their root back to Vedic philosophy. And Vedic philosophy, we can think of it as a meta spirituality, that it lays out in front of us the different ways humans can approach the divine. So through action, through devotional service, through higher knowledge, and through meditation, or that inner journey, which we'll be talking about in later calls. But the beauty of it and just the depth and scope of Vedic philosophy is so incredible because, again, it gives us that bigger perspective that there's not only one way to approach the divine. Of course, there are many different ways, and we see it throughout history in many different cultures. So it's a great lesson for us who think that there's only one way or that our way is the right way, and we criticize others or reject other forms because they are different. But in the Vedic philosophy, it says there are many different approaches to the divine.
And you know what I like about it? I love that because I was raised Catholic. And so you have this kind of framework. Even if you reject being Catholic or Christian or whatever religion you grew up in, not that I did, but it was like I was trying to find something more. So it was a way to, I found that the Vedic philosophy really fits in with a lot of what I learned especially about devotion and Bhakti Yoga. And when I was young, I would, go to church and pray to God and pray to Jesus and, feeling that love of God. And I remember when I was like 9 years old, I sat in church and I was thinking about how I wanted to serve God. That's what I wanted to do in my life. Like I had such a love for God. And so, even in an organized religion, it gets a bad rap. There's such beautiful things. It can kind of give you a little foundation to, especially this devotional love.
Yeah, I mean, there is a difference between spirituality and religion, of course. But hopefully, religion is a place to do your spiritual work.
So spirituality is one thing, and a religion is how we apply it and the kind of method that we use toward God.
Yes, and also the cultural forms that it takes, because religion, let's say, it's a way of adapting these spiritual practices into the culture so that they make sense to people.
It's interesting, speaking of this, and we'll go into Bhakti Yoga, but just this reminds me of, I thought Buddhism was just one one religion, but if you think about Tibetan Buddhism and then Zen Buddhism, they're very different. Like Zen Buddhism is very like cut and dry and kind of simple, and Tibetan Buddhism has all the deities and all the rituals, and there's so much more, but they're both in the foundation of Buddhism. And so that's really where religion comes in. It's like it adds its little flavor. The Tibetan culture is very colorful and very, they have the deities from the Hindu philosophy or the Vedanta philosophy. There's certain Vedanta philosophies that are
absolutely
that have that. So it's interesting. So when we look at spirituality and we're reading books from different types of Eastern philosophy, just keep that in mind too. Like what the culture is that you're learning from and where that teacher is from, that culture is going to be different. So Westerners will look at Buddhism and Vedanta very differently than maybe someone in a different culture.
Yeah, and then of course we're taking the Jungian perspective, and Jung's approach was essentially that these are universal expressions of our human psyche. If you look at history, all throughout history, people have sought the divine through different means. And then you see those cultural expressions in religion and the symbolism that goes into that. He definitely advised against just trying to copy or just trying to imitate the outward form of things. So when we look at yoga, it's not necessarily about just imitating that.
Just going to the yoga class.
but really,
I like the last part where you just lay down and do nothing. That's my favorite.
Yeah, right. But he would say, think about how you can find those universal principles in your own history, in your own experience. And then that brings it to life.
Yeah, so even in different cultures, like, family life, there's these different qualities. So let's get into Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is the path of love, devotion, and surrender. It's about, like, that heart. We were talking about Karma Yoga, which is about action and non-attachment. And it's kind of a mental construct of letting go of the attachment, understanding our patterns, not getting pulled in.
I think we talked about Karma Yoga.
Karma Yoga. Yeah. And so Bhakti Yoga is really more of what's going on in my heart. What is my like a relationship with God or the divine or the higher self? What is that relationship? It's like a love relationship with.
Yeah, very much so. It can take that form. So let's say in the Vedic text, the way it's explained is that the abstract concept of the divine, it's so vast and abstract that we as human beings have difficulty holding that in mind, holding that concept in mind that we are in this divine universe, and it's a manifestation of the divine itself. So it says, in order to aid that focus, that attention on the divine, it's okay to use a symbol, an image, very much like the Buddha in the background there, that you have an image that represents that divinity or that spirituality, and it helps your mind focus and stay on track.
And I think a lot of times mostly for me, it's better to have a human symbol, because that's how we relate. Like in the beginning, it's like relating to like Jesus or an image of like a divine, like a saint or something that helps you feel this, love for and that connection for. When you're saying that, it just makes me think about the laughing, like kind of the idea like, oh, the universe, the universe has my back, or the universe is, it's not, the universe doesn't want me to do that. And it's like when you say universe, it doesn't have that kind of same quality. Right. It's a high concept, and it's a beautiful concept, I think, because most people don't want to use the word God, or, because of all their religious baggage or something. But I think that if you can have a symbol, instead of just refer it to the universe, maybe it's just light or something. But I find that when it's like a human form or like an idea, you can feel that devotion in a much
Yeah.
stronger way, don't you think? Especially for people that are beginning their spiritual practice, it's probably then an abstract symbol.
Absolutely, because it personifies it.
Yeah.
You're relating to a person, which is what we're used to in human relationships. So now we have that personal relationship, but with the divine, with the spiritual element in us, through the symbol, through that identification of Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, or even a symbol like the cross or the Om sign. Those
which
things,
is our logo now.
Yeah, they help us focus our mind and our kind of direct that inward journey to the symbol itself and to the divine. So it becomes like Tagore said, the great Vedic poet. He said, think of your relationship with the divine as a father or a parent to a child, where you are the child and the divine is the parent. Or he says you can flip it. You can be the parent and the divine is your child, so that you're caring for it, you're cultivating it, but you have that very direct emotional relationship with the divine.
What about Rumi? He talks about God as his lover or partner. You know, it's like this very romantic view of God.
Absolutely.
I have a beautiful poem. Should I read it from Rumi?
Sure.
We all love a little Rumi in our life. I got to put my readers on. So I read this morning, and I thought this was really great to share. Rumi. It's from this book. This is a great book. It's by Andrew Harvey. The Essential Mystics. This book here. It's really a nice little collection of wisdom. My little glasses. These are kind of big now that I look at them. Okay. Gloria, it's called What a Miracle. Glorious is the moment we sit in the palace, you and I. Two forms, two faces, but a single soul. You and I. The flowers will blaze, birds cry, shower us with immortality. The moment we enter the garden, you and I. All the stars of heaven will run out to gaze at us. As we burn as the full moon itself, you and I, the fire-winged birds of heaven will rage with every envy. In the place we laugh ecstatically, you and I. What a miracle, you and I, entwined in the same nest. What a miracle, you and I, one love, one lover, one fire. In this world and the next, in an ecstasy without end. Rumi. Wow. Yeah. That was beautiful. I got goosebumps when I was reading it. But it's when we say Bhatki, that's what we're thinking. It's like this out of this world, beautiful love for the divine. And I think one of the great ways a very simple way you can start expressing it is through gratitude. It's one of the most beautiful things you can just recently, we're moving and we're kind of going through a lot of change in our life, and I just have so much gratitude for everything that we're doing this year. It's been a really good year for us, and all our clients that are coming in, our students, and just this wonderful sense of gratitude and just to have that love, for, that we're supported and loved by this higher power, higher God, universe, the divine.
Yeah,
so that's a really beautiful thing. So gratitude is something you can do.
Yeah, Sufism is a great example of Bhakti Yoga there. And that there was actually a historical connection. A lot of people don't know that. There is a connection where some of the Sufis were reading the Vedic text. And so they're expressing some of that Bhakti, some of those Bhakti Yoga ideas. A
lot of people, they read Rumi and they think, oh, he's with a woman and he loves this woman, but he's doing it, this expression of love toward the divine.
Absolutely.
And I remember when I was single and I was kind of like trying to build my confidence and trying to build my spiritual life. It was before I met you. I used to listen instead of with the love songs they would come on, they'd make me depressed because I was alone. And then I just started switching them in my mind that this love song was God singing it to me. Like, I'm so glad I found you and you're so wonderful and all those happy love songs. I started to think of it as a devotional practice. So even in the modern world, to take something like a romantic song and turn it into a devotional practice is something that helped me because it was felt like I was connecting with something even deeper than just a romantic partner. I was connecting with my soul. It was beautiful.
Yes, and if you notice in human affairs, often the emotions are seen as problematic. But in directing them towards the divine, then the emotions become a way of connecting to that deeper element in us. And so you see practices like St. Francis of Assisi kind of connecting with animals, with the all living beings, as seeing them as divine, trying to connect with people that are outcast as these
a selfless kindness about it.
That, cultivating that openness, that kindness, that seeing everyone and everything as worthy of love, right? Worthy of that connection. That is the cultivation of the Bhakti Yoga in us.
So it's kind of like that namaste idea that the divine in me acknowledges the divine in you. So that would be another thing, to love one another, to share kindness and love and receive, and be able to receive it from each other. I mean, that's really a way we can practice it with each other because we're interacting with God, every person that we meet.
That's right. And then you see that transcendence in you mentioned Saint Teresa, where she falls into an ecstasy that transcends kind of the ego mind, just by cultivating that strong love of the divine.
And so when we think about psychologically, what does it do for us to practice Bhakti Yoga in a Jungian perspective?
Yeah. So if you think about the emotions as directed outward into the world, right? We're attached to things out in the world. We think, oh, these objects are going to make me happy. When I get the car, when I get the home, when I get the relationship, something out there is going to make me happy. But it never works, right? It's a temporary experience, and then you're on to the next thing. So it says, when you're cultivating that directing the emotions, the love, the devotion to the divine, that brings you real satisfaction, because it is the counterpoint to it. It is the real source of that happiness. And so you're kind of completing the circle, that you're directing your human emotions, which when scattered out into the world, or when wasted on the objects of the world,
like ice cream and yummy food,
they just lead to,
or the wrong person that you love, infatuation.
Yeah, they either lead to addiction or to frustration. It's not going to lead you to higher states of awareness. But when directed towards the divine, then they do fulfill that purpose. They satisfy you. They connect you to that source.
And so psychologically too, I think it's a way to also transcend the ego, because you're not getting that attachment. You're devoting everything in service. And it's kind of like what we talked about in karma yoga, where you let go of the attachment, you dedicate it to the higher power, the higher self. This would be, you do it with love. And I remember last year when COVID first hit, and we were just like, what's going to happen? Like, none of us knew, the whole world's going to shut down, or economy's going to shut down. We didn't know. And Rob and I both decided that what do we do that we love? What do we have to share? And we created a free course that we gave away, and we just taught higher knowledge. We were like, we did it for love. We had no attachment, but we were like, we have to do something. Like, we have this knowledge, we have to share it, people need it right now. And it was such a beautiful experience just to do it out of love. And of course, we still have to charge now and all that because we can't do that forever. But at that moment, it felt right to do something like that.
Absolutely.
And there's times where you have to do something out of love and a non-attachment, and then the abundance and everything will come in other ways, in other forms.
Yeah, and often the question then arises, okay, so there are these different paths. Do I have to choose one, or are we talking about combining all of these paths into one? And I would say that we need to combine all these different paths to some extent, because we have to take action in the world, even though we're practicing a Bhakti Yoga and cultivating that devotional love for the divine. We still have to act in the world. We still have to work, like you said. We still have to pay the bills and all that stuff. So the karma yoga then comes in handy in understanding, how do I act in the world when I'm working, when I'm taking action. But in the Vedic philosophy, it says, think of choosing one as your primary way of doing this.
And the 4R, and we'll go over them in our series, is the path of action, which is karma yoga, the path of love and devotion, which is jnana yoga.
No, it's
I'm sorry, Bhakti yoga. I'm jumping ahead because I'm thinking the next one. The path of higher knowledge, which is jnana yoga, which is more the intellect. And then the Raja Yoga, which is the path of meditation. And so many of you you practice, we all have to act. So I think karma yoga is a given. Like, we all have to practice that in a way. Maybe if you're a monk, you would probably do more devotional and well, I guess you would do the all of them too, the jnana and all that. But but I think that if you really connect with that devotion. One of my friends, he's a very strict Christian, and he basically said the reason his business went so well, he just started dedicating everything to the divine, and he did it out of love for Jesus and for Christ, and he was very, very Christian, and it was like, and it worked for him. Like, he was very abundant because he applied basically Vedic philosophy, but he was thinking it's in the Christian culture. And so these things work even if you're not a Vedic philosopher, regardless of what religion you are or what you connect with, you can apply these principles. So I found that very interesting. I was like, oh, like he's talking about Bhakti Yoga right now. So very beautiful.
Yeah. And so now, how do we practice this? How do we cultivate this in a practical everyday life, especially the way we live now with computers and jet planes and viruses and
Ubers?
And Uber.
Well, I think the first thing is you have to have a symbol that you can use, and that could change, but come up with a symbol for you that feels good. For some people it's Krishna, for some people it's Buddha, for some people it's Christ, for some people it's God or a God image.
Yeah, I think here's where Jung's advice comes in handy, right? So he's saying, look for these principles in your own culture, in your own history. You do have to reinterpret them in a sense to bring them to life in you, to where they make sense in you. But because these are universals, they are already in our culture, in our past, and the traditions that our parents taught us and our great grandparents. But often we reject them, right? Because in part, every generation rejects the last generation's
I know. I
approach.
talk to my clients in India, and they're like, "Oh, I don't do Veda philosophy. That's my Swami Vivekananda. That was my parents and my grandparents, and they want to do something else. They do the spirituality, like the law of attraction stuff. Not everyone, but it's funny how everyone and we're like in the West going, oh, we want to do the Eastern philosophy, because we want to reject the West. But I think the best, if you're in the West, you don't want to get rid of the Western the Western culture because it's a part of you. So like stripping away your need for materials things and all that might be too extreme for a lot of people, and then they get confused. But we are in this culture. Can we integrate? How can we integrate psychology? What we know about psychology, what we know about our lives as in a consumer society, how do we integrate and have a business and find love and get married and have families and do all those things, plus bring in that spiritual element. And I think it's the East-West. And that's what Jung really tried to do. He tried to merge those in his psychology is like, how do we understand it in a new way? You can't just go all the way east, you can't go all the way west, you have to find that balance.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about emotions, right, and cultivating our emotions, the path then begins with understanding, well, what is an emotion? Like, what does it mean for me to feel anger or to feel love or to feel any of those powerful emotions? What is it talking about when I feel those experiences? And as we know, there's let's say the emotional intelligence of our culture is very low. Very few people really understand emotions. We're so focused on cognition.
Well, I think in the West, we're afraid of them. Yeah. You know, we're told to get rid of the emotions, to suppress them, to clear them, heal them. You know, like, God, don't feel anything except if you're feeling upset, something's wrong, and there's something dangerous about feeling anger or fear. You know, those things we function on that. That's what makes life meaningful, is to not be afraid of them. And so it's really more the fear of the emotion than the emotion itself. Yeah.
And a lot of it is simply the misunderstanding that these emotions can damage us or harm us to somehow.
Or wreck our lives. And
And of course, if we act out on them, if we act out of anger or rage or something like that, they can hurt you, you know, or they can hurt others as well. But the idea of, let's say, that moving towards them, understanding them, opening that emotional life up is somehow dangerous or destructive, that's the wrong idea. The whole idea in Jungian psychology, for example, was to be able to look at those things and use them for your personal development.
And I think that for me, it's the deeper you can go with the unpleasant emotions, the higher you can go with that divine love. Like, I feel like if you want to practice love and devotion of the divine and dedication and all this beautiful stuff, if you aren't dealing with the lower stuff, you're not going to reach that pinnacle, because in a way you're saying it's hard to feel. Right. And I remember when I was a hypnotherapist, because I used to do a lot of sessions in person and dealt with lots of emotions. And really what was more painful for most people is feeling love. And so I would work with like single people on finding, you know, imagining themselves in love. And they would just cry, and they were like, why am I crying? Like it just was overwhelming, because they weren't giving themselves permission to feel. And there's so much stigma around emotion, especially in the West. Well, in a lot of cultures, that it's such emotions are like these like foreign things, but they're a natural part of life. Grief and fear and anger and love and excitement and anxiety, we all feel them. It's just that when they go to those extremes, and we're letting them run our life. That's really where the problem is. But we can really go toward them and express them. Then we can feel the range of emotions, and that's what makes life so beautiful, is to be able to feel sad when something sad happens, and be able to feel joy when something joyful happens. What if we can have everything, all those feelings? And that's what, when we say devotion, it's how willing are you to feel what's uncomfortable, to feel the heights of that devotion.
For example, we see in Jungian psychology this emphasis on the symbolic life. But he's saying in the symbol there's a feeling tone to it. There's a numinosity to it, meaning...
I love that term, numinous.
The numinous quality of the symbol, it has that transcendent quality. Like when you look at something meaningful for yourself, you know, if you're a Christian, you look at the cross or the crucifixion or the Om sign if you're meditating, that it's conveying a lot more than just an idea. It has a direct connection to your emotions, to your heart. And that leads us then into the soul work, right? That now you're talking about the soul. Now you're talking about what is really inside you as the core of your being, not just these ideas that are arising from your cognition, from your head.
And so feeling those human emotions, and then there's a subtle like difference with the love. Like you could start with the love that you know, like you love your parents or you love your children. I always have people think about the happiest day of their life. I say, what was the happiest day of your life? And it's interesting. Can you think of the happiest day of your life? It's a hard question. Most people could tell you the most terrible day of their life, right? Oh yeah, when I lost my job, or I did, broke up with X. That was the terrible day. But when we think about a good day, we don't really. It's not as strong impression. And so I have people think about the happiest day, and you start cultivating that love of that day. That moment. And then you can start building, and then there's another level of it that is divine. It kind of transcends the human experience, and then it becomes that what Rumi would say ecstasy or bliss. But you have to start with kind of feeling that, happy feeling that you're familiar with to get to that level. So it's like a higher level, and there is a subtle shift because when you love, there's still a little attachment. But when you get to this higher level, and it takes practice, this is something, okay, I'm going to do this afternoon. But as you cultivate that love and use the symbol, you're going to notice that something starts to click differently. Like, ooh, there's even another level of love that I could feel.
Yeah. And well, if you think about romantic love, and I imagine that's what you're talking about, right? Romantic love? Or
no,
the
just love
of
a child. Like, here's the perfect example. When I say, what is your favorite day? Most people will either say the day they met their partner, or when they think of their partner, their happy feeling, or the day their child was born, their first child, holding their first child in their arms,
right.
Or like being with their grandmother, or it always had a person to it. Like it was like someone they loved, and it was just this beautiful feeling. Some people have like, I'm walking along the beach and it's a beautiful day. It is, their happy place, but the real deep feeling is a love of another person. Maybe not always romantic, but more like a love, like a
Yeah,
connection.
Because if you think, well, psychologically, what's happening there is that the beloved now, just like Rumi says, is the symbol now of love, right? They possess that numinous quality that activates your soul, and so when you experience love, when you're really falling in love or have fallen in love, you're in that state of mind, right, of transcendence. You're like transported out of the ordinary world into dream time, right? That going beyond the ordinary. That's why it's so powerful, because you know something has happened to you that has changed your life completely. The mistake people make, or that we often make, is that we think it is in that person, that person is...
Or that event.
Yes, or the object, or the symbol, that is where the magic is, the numinosity. But it's really the numinous feeling is arising from within us.
It's reflecting. It's a way to reflect. It's like looking into a mirror. That symbol's reflecting back. So that symbol is, just think of it as a mirror for you to see your deeper self. We can't look at our face. We need a mirror to see it, right? We have to. We can't just because our eyes are here. We can't look down. Maybe we can see our nose a little bit. But the mirror that we want to, like a reflection, we have to see it in a reflective surface, like a mirror.
Yes. So now we think, okay, yoga is a discipline of the mind, or the mind-body. Now we can understand Bhakti Yoga as the discipline of the heart.
I like that.
You're disciplining your mind, focusing on this way of approaching the divine, and cultivating in a conscious way, cultivating that feeling that you have.
I love that. The discipline of the mind and then the discipline of the heart.
Yeah, yeah. And the practice, of course, is opening your heart up to the divine in a conscious way through ritual, through practice, through devotional service, chanting, music, dance, like Rumi would do, singing. All these human expressions then become directed towards that divine path.
I find that in my most difficult times, that Bhatki, that heartfelt devotional emotion that I felt toward the divine, like really helped me get through so many tough times, because I felt connected to something bigger than my ego. And so when I was scared or, uncertain about where to go, wondering what my life was going to be like, I would always, it was I always say there's nowhere to fall, because there was always this kind of groundedness that was solid to something bigger than me. And it's hard to describe, but it is that kind of wonderful, connection, I think, and feeling connected to really your deepest part of yourself. And, even romantically, when I met you, that was the feeling I felt, not the, ooh, oh, I did feel that too, but, but it was more of that, there's something more solid, it has this kind of unwavering faith, unwavering, it's God's not going to show up and leave me, and abandon me, that fear of God's not going to answer my prayers, or God's not going to listen today. It's like I always knew I was taken care of. And it's that faith. And, we talk about love, devotion, and surrender. That's where the surrender is. We have to surrender our ego. We're not surrendering our dreams. We're not surrendering what we want. We have to surrender our ego's attachment to that. And when we hold that love, it's like beyond the fear, like I'm surrendering this fear to the divine. It's just like this love that I know is going to carry me through.
Yeah, so we've talked about this relationship with the divine as being a parent to a child, a lover to a lover, but there's also like a friend to a friend. And in the Gita, you see Krishna is a dear friend of Arjuna. He is his friend above the relative part of it. He advises him, he guides him. He's not attached to winning or losing the war. He's simply saying, I'm here for you, whatever you need of me. He
had the choice to have the vast army or have Krishna, and he chose Krishna. And it was that kind of, I know who's on my side. And that is a beautiful, to know that there's the true self in you will never abandon you, and that that is the part of you that can never be harmed, can never be destroyed. No matter how scared your little ego is and is dealing with all its little emotions, there's this bigger part of you that's kind of there, and it's like going to take you to where you need to be, and always feel that sense of you can let go.
Yeah,
that letting go of not trying to do God's work for God. Like, I'm going to, plan it out, and that white knuckling through life, trying to make things happen so much. It's that devotion and that love that, I love this phrase that the divine in you wants what you want, more than you want it. It's the divine in you is on your side, is your friend.
Yeah, so the metaphor is that Arjuna is in a war, essentially, which is really our experience of life. We're in a kind of war that there's this battle going on.
Well, there is kind of a lot of battles going on, yeah.
Yeah, not only literally, right, but internally there's a battle going on for our soul. Like, what are we going to do with our life, in a sense? And the obstacles are really great, just like Arjuna was facing these incredible odds. And the odds were not in their favor, in a sense, in Arjuna's favor. But Krishna says, don't worry, I'm driving, right? I'm the driver of your chariot, meaning I'm in control. You don't have to figure it all out. You don't have to do it all yourself. if you trust in me, if you have that connection, that friendly connection with the divine, it is the driver of your life. It is the one that is opening the path, driving your chariot. And so the metaphor works at so many different levels that, yes, this cultivation of this friendly approach to our spiritual life and trusting in it, using it as our guide, depending on it instead of depending on the armies, like you were saying, right? That Arjuna chose the advice of Krishna over having all his armies. That means that we're trusting in the divine instead of our own physical force, economic force, whatever kind of power you have in the world. You're saying, no, the divine is much more powerful. It is the one that is driving. It is the one that is going to get me through this battle. And therefore, I trust.
And of course, this isn't something that you just believe. You have to study higher knowledge. You have to self-inquiry. You have to try this on yourself. Someone was asking about what's the scientific proof and what about atheists. And there's two types of ways to look at the universe, two paradigms. There's the materialistic universe, which is looking for physical evidence. And then there's the conscious universe, which is consciousness is the source of everything versus the material. And so you have to decide what paradigm are you working in. And then also this idea of scientific proof is actually not true. You can't really prove anything scientifically. All you can do is have a theory about it. And the theory is, let's test it out. And then we all know science is an art. It's not absolute truth. So Einstein had his theories, but then other people came in and they fine-tuned it the more we knew and the more we understand. So the question really is, how do you examine your own mind to find your own truth? Like, we're not trying to tell you what to believe. We're telling you what the Bhakti Yoga is, but we really want you to ask the only way you really know is to test it out yourself. Ask yourself those questions. It's a direct experience. So we're going to talk about Jnana Yoga, which is the study of higher knowledge, and that's why I wanted to also talk about that, is that these are great, but if you don't understand the higher knowledge, you don't study it, and then apply it and ask the questions and meditate on it and then get a direct experience, that's the only way you know. And religion is different. Religion says you need to believe this. Here's the word of God and you need to believe this. In philosophy, this is kind of a concept that we invite you to look at, and that's been around for thousands of years. And actually in quantum physics, they're now starting to see that what the Vedas philosophy was teaching thousands and thousands of years ago are actually the same thing, that there is no material, everything's consciousness.
Yeah.
And everything's connected, everything's one. And so it's kind of, they knew it, and now we have to go all through Western science to start asking the question, because it is that wrestling with that and understanding it directly and going on the journey yourself.
Yeah, very much so.
No one can teach you how to love. You have to cultivate that love for yourself.
Yeah, the Vedic philosophy does not say believe this, but rather it says observe this in yourself. Observe your own awareness, your own experience of things, and test it out, right? It doesn't say, if you don't believe this, you're going to go to hell or anything.
And we're not talking about an external God. I know you're saying someone outside. This is you're seeing. We're coming up with a symbol so that you can see the divine in you. And so but for some people, it's like a co-creation they need to kind of go through first. It just depends on your own relationship with what the divine is and what that feels like. It feels more comfortable for some people to see it an external image first, but what the ultimate truth is that we're seeing our own self reflection. Don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it really is about cultivating that love, coming up with a symbol that you can use, and practicing what it would mean for your little ego if you had that kind of love and that cultivation.
Yeah, I would just add that coming up with a symbol, what we mean is more paying attention to the psyche, because we know in Jungian psychology, the paying attention to your dreams, to your imagination, to even to the world around you, essentially will give you that symbol. Mm-hmm. So it's not like a conscious choosing of, okay, I'm going to focus on this symbol, but more of
it'll arise.
Yeah, what speaks to me, what has that numinous quality, and choosing that or going with that, trusting in that when a symbol has that powerful numinous quality for you, you say this is worthy of attention, and you use it to focus.
Yeah, and it can evolve over time, and you start with that, and really. What we know is that human emotions are, beautiful, but there's a higher ecstasy that we can reach. And when we read the words of Tagore and Rumi, where were these people, what states were these people in? And wouldn't it be nice to live in that state? Not to push away the world, but how do we balance being in the world and having all the things we want as Westerners and in society and all the everything of life, making it meaningful, and then also have that spiritual element. And it's really about cultivating your own spiritual practice. And Bhakti Yoga is about bringing the heart into your spiritual life. How do we bring it into our heart? How do we really feel connected? Because I know a lot of people that read a lot of stuff, and it's very intellectual, but there's no feeling to it. And that piece, it's like you can't really embody it just from intellectual understanding.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of the spiritual practices that are focused on the Bhakti Yoga, they're talking about the heart, cultivating the heart. And so you see images like of Jesus with his heart on fire.
Yeah, the flame, right?
I wasn't raised Catholic, but when I saw that image, I recognized it, right? I saw, universally you see that igniting of the passions, but for spirituality. And
I used to feel that toward Mother Mary. When I would see Mother Mary, I'd be like, oh, she's such a warm, loving mother, like my mother. I was just always felt that devotion to her. I never had like a guy, like the gold man in the beard. Like I never felt that, but I felt like more as a Catholic, like Jesus and Mary were more kind of on my speed than the old gray beard man. I felt like that more connection to that. And ultimately we're really dealing with the relationship with ourselves everywhere we go. So imagine bringing that relationship. It kind of takes self-love to another realm. Like we can have self-love and, say we're good enough and strong enough and, nurture ourselves with pedicures and manicures and facials. Or we could also have self-love by cultivating those higher states of love and emotion in our life. And that's really, I would say, is the height, the true self-love. Because you're loving the self with a big S, not the little ego.
Absolutely. So
yes.
What are we talking about next week?
So next week, I believe we're talking about Jnana Yoga, which is the path of higher knowledge, which is how do we, what are the lessons, what are the kind of the text that the Vedas teach us about life, about consciousness, about practice, and it's that intellectual knowledge. So I think all of these four are really great to have in your life, and then pick which one. Like I kind of switch around. Like I did the higher knowledge for a while because I was like, I need to kind of gain all this intellectual understanding. And then now it has shifted more to devotional. It was devotional before, higher knowledge, and then you kind of stick it around. You kind of switch around, and then there's certain points in your life where one is really more prominent, and maybe it's a week vacation, and you're like, I'm going to do meditation this week. I don't need to do all the other stuff. I don't need to read anything. I don't need to do any action. I just want to meditate. So we're going to talk about that in the next week.
Awesome.
So thank you so much for your questions. One last question. It's important to be aware of the person who is worshiping is just a symbol and not the actual person. Yes. And then also you're a symbol. Your ego's a symbol, like yourself, like the self-identity. It's a symbol. It's not really who you are as a symbol too, interacting with another symbol.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. All right. Well, take care. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you next week on the next soul session.
Stay well.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching.
Yes.